So the road trip it had kind of been an ongoing joke between Raz and I for years since high school. Honestly, like, it was just like, oh, we need to, take a road trip out to... Raz had wanted to go to California for the longest time because he had never seen the other side of the country. I had gone when I was very young, so I'm just like, oh, been there, done that. I had gone through, like, Arizona and Nevada to get to California, so I'm just like, it's all desert, it's terrible, don't do it. But we had the idea, and then a couple of months before summer hit one year, our friend Raz was just like, hey, guess what? We're gonna take a road trip to Colorado, because Raz's friend Caleb lived in Colorado, had flown back to Connecticut to visit his family, and then rather than fly back, we decided to drive him back and make an event out of it. So Raz and I started planning this for months, saving up money. We kind of corralled our friend Bennett into doing it in the last 2 weeks, because both of us had thought that we had told him, and neither of us had. So that was a bit of a panic at the last minute, but it all worked out in the end. And with that, I was surprised at how cool my parents tend to be. A little just like, oh, I can't believe you're doing this with so little planning, but they were very cool. They were very happy that I was going on a cross-country road trip with friends, which, to be fair, my middle name is Hunter after Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, so if there's any reason to take a road trip throughout the country, then that's probably it. So with that, we embarked.
I say, so my friend Razvan texted me a couple weeks prior in, I believe, July of 2015, just saying, hey, want to go on a road trip to Colorado? And I was like, what? And I was working at the library at the time. I was actually working on my final paper for college. I graduated a little bit late, and he's just texted me out of the blue, and I, on a whim, I said, yeah, immediately, and asked my boss at work to let me off. She said yes. We got the money together for a van a couple weeks prior. Got everybody together. Got our snacks and just drove off. And the road trip was a blast. Just hanging out with friends inside of a car for 2 days, just, talking a bunch about stuff, playing video games, watching movies. We actually stopped by a Cracker Barrel on our way to the road trip and picked up this DVD box set of like 300, like over something like 60 or like 90 hours of like old like animation from like the 30s, Popeye, Betty Boop, like old Mickey cartoons, and we were just watching them for a good while on the way to the road, on the way there. Just, admiring the sights, seeing all the states, going through Nebraska and smelling all the pesticides in the air. It was an amazing experience just seeing how vast the country was and how much of it we hadn't seen and didn't realize existed.
Getting on the road was a bit of a surprise at first because Raz had said he had booked us like a Prius or something like that, and I was just dreading the entire time. It's just like, okay, it's going to be great because we're not going to have to spend that much money on gas, but oh my god, we're all going to be cramped in this tiny little car the entire time. Luckily, there was a mix-up at the last moment where they're just like, hey, so we don't have the Prius, we actually accidentally gave it to somebody else, but we do have this gigantic minivan we can give you. Which, honestly, is the weirdest mix-up in the history of existence, where it's just like, that's like if you order a salad at a place and they give you a bacon cheeseburger instead. But it worked out in our favor, because we had all this space, we could sleep in the back if we wanted to, if you can sleep in the back of cars, but that comes into play later. And we could just stretch out and not get too cramped, which is, I think, what made the way there so utterly enjoyable, because we spent most of our time on the road. We stopped once at a hotel when we got to Ohio the first night. Next day we woke up, went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because that's the only thing in Ohio, and we had a wonderful time there. We saw the bands that were being inducted that year were Green Day, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, and Ringo, independent of the Beatles. So they had a lot of fun exhibits for them. They had, what were some fun stuff? George Clinton from Parliament and Funkadelic, they had so many of his outfits. Some of my personal favorites, stuff he wore for Maggot Brain, or Atomic Dog, which is, of course, a wonderful song. Some Beatles exhibits, Sgt. Pepper stuff, all of it was great. If you get a chance and you're in Ohio for some reason, go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Next day, we drove all the way through. That really gives you insight to how huge America is as a country. We just drove and drove and drove for hours. I drove the entirety of the day. At the end of the day, my friend Raz and I, because we were the only two people in the car with driver's license, looked at each other, and Raz said, "Do you really want to spend money on a hotel room for the night? You've been driving all day, I've been doing nothing. We could just plow through and make it to Colorado by tomorrow morning." And I said, "Sure, let's do that." And had a wonderful rest of the ride up there. We were very tired by the time we got there, but I remember as soon as we crossed the state line in Colorado, just leaning out the window and cheering because we were just so happy we had finally made it. So what would you say you do once we got to Boulder and we were settled in a bit?
Well, we just sort of hung out. I mean, it was just coming off of basically doing a whole days of driving without sleeping practically, so we just didn't want to basically move at all. So, we sat down, watched Netflix for a little bit, met a few people. We actually met a couple people from high school that we haven't seen in a while who moved out to Colorado as well. Hung out at their place, saw a lot of the more suburban part of Boulder. And I believe after... What did we do? I can't remember doing much besides watching
Denny's.
TV and going to Denny's, exactly. That's pretty much all that's pretty much most of what I recall. Just, talking to, friends out there about, different music and about, different activities we like to do, and yeah, that's all I can get.
Well, I can't tell you much about the first day I got there. I was the worst. I was incredibly grumpy because I hadn't slept in like 30 hours. I'm incapable of sleeping in cars, unfortunately. I don't know what it is, but I can just not fall asleep in them. And then, of course, once I got to Boulder, it was nice and sunny and everybody was super cheerful, so that just put me in an even worse mood because I was sad, so everybody else should be sad. But eventually, one of the roommates there gave me some melatonin and I slept incredibly, and it helped reset my sleep cycle. So, once I got some sleep and I was back to my normal self, I decided to look around, and I discovered in Denver, right next to Boulder, there's this wonderful goth club called The Church, which is literally just an abandoned church they had turned into a goth nightclub, which is my dream place to be. So I spent the night there, I met a girl there, I ended up staying at her place that night, and I came back the next day, and it was just, the next day was very chill. It was just going with all the friends that I had gone with on the road trip, just meeting up with some people we had knew in high school who moved out to Colorado, partaking in Colorado's legalized marijuana, going to Denny's, just playing video games, just enjoying ourselves, having a wonderful day.
Well, this one night, I believe it was the second night that we were in Colorado or in Boulder. We were just laying down, just hanging out, watching TV. All of a sudden, one of the roommates of Caleb, our friend who lived in Boulder, started to act very strange, sort of like walking around, just talking incoherently. I assumed that he had either like taken something or had anxiety or something from something he had to do at school. So I took him outside and talked to him for a little bit on the patio or the balcony that was in the apartment about different rap groups that like Onyx and Kendrick Lamar, just stuff just to do small talk to sort of like calm him down and get his mind off whatever. But he seemed very off and strange. And so I went back inside, started playing some video games, and then all of a sudden, a chair flies over my head and slams against the wall, and several of the legs shattered off. I look up, the same guy is completely stripped down and shaking, like visibly shaking, and we obviously tell him to calm down, go in his room, relax, because we knew that he was on something. We didn't know what, but he was on something. And then I sort of go back to what I was doing, and then I look up again, and he is wrestling with Caleb and Razvan. So I join in and try to restrain him as he's trying to basically tear our hair out and bite us. And we thought we had him cajoled or contained for a little while, and then he darted towards the kitchen and grabbed something, and before I realized what happened, he sliced me across the forehead, a good... as he gets 19 stitches for it, and I pushed him back, and in a state of like shock and confusion, I went onto the balcony. The rest of my friends, got out of the apartment, which is a smart thing to do, but I didn't know where I was going, so I went to the balcony, and then he actually came after me and attacked me again, and basically, thankfully he wasn't that big, so I was able to, constrain him again, and I thought I had him under control, and we were talking for a second. And then he proceeded to basically grab a handful of handful of hair and bite my palm really hard, basically taking a chunk out of my palm. And so I pushed him off, went out the balcony door, closed it, and then proceeded to go down the stairs and wait for the police to arrive. So the police got there. I'm sitting down with Maxx outside. The EMTs are attending to me. We hear the police gather outside the door, and some incoherent yelling from the person in question. And then the door gets knocked down. We hear a taser, and then 4 gunshots. And I knew that he was dead. There's no way he could have survived that. And afterward, I don't know why I only met him the day before, but maybe it's because I was trying to, calm him down and talk him down beforehand, but I just sort of, broke down after that and started basically sobbing uncontrollably, just, I guess, in, shock and despair. And afterward, I was taken to the hospital, got stitched up, and found out afterwards that the rest of my friends had made it out okay, which I was incredibly grateful for.
Well, the night in question, we had all just sort of started to... I think it was not that late. It was getting later at night. And we were all just sort of lying on the couches there. I think we were watching Parks and Recreation on Netflix. We're just having a good time, just laying back, relaxing a bit. And I remember one of the roommates, the same roommate who gave me melatonin to help me reset my sleep schedule, he started walking around the apartment like naked with his laptop, just carrying it around. And I remember looking up and then looking at Razvan and Caleb, and they're just like, that's weird. But to be fair, it was Boulder. I'd walked around the streets of it, and it seemed like everybody was on at least one drug. So I'm just like, maybe this is how things go down here? It's okay. We'll be fine. He's not doing anything wrong at the moment. And then, later on, he threw a chair? Because I remember seeing this. I remember being sucked into my own little world. I was playing video games at the time. And I remember hearing a gigantic crash and screaming and just looking up and seeing that there was a chair that he had thrown past my friend Razvan's head. And just instantly Raz and Caleb tackled him. Bennett jumped into action to help them out too. At that point, I didn't think there was anything else I could do to help subdue him, so I was still sitting on the other side of the room from them. So I was just making sure everything was okay. And they had pinned him down for long enough, and it seemed like they had calmed him down. Like they seemed like they had talked him off of the edge. So Raz, being the incredibly nice guy he did, finally let go of him, unpinned him, and the second he did that, Kid ran for the kitchen and reached into the silverware drawer. Raz and Caleb had the right idea of, as soon as that happened, they were just like, let's go outside. So they ran outside of the apartment, and from what I understand, they managed to get into a neighbor's apartment and lock the door behind them. I, at that point, after seeing him reach into the silverware drawer, was stunned. I didn't follow them. I thought they were still right behind me. Bennett, being the amazing person that he is, tried to wrestle the knife that he had grabbed out of his hand. Unfortunately, he got a very large and deep scar on his head because of that. I started screaming at him at that point, because you never want to see your best friend bleed, obviously. And he lunged at me with the knife and managed... I was wearing a shirt at the time. I jumped back just in time to the point where the shirt was completely cut down the middle, but I wasn't. And at that point, I had the same idea of Raz and Caleb of get outside. I thought Bennett was right behind me. Unfortunately, he went in the other direction in a panic, and I really wish I could have either gone in the same direction as him or got him to follow me out, but I couldn't. So I was outside in the parking lot freaking out. I had no idea what was going on. At that point, I didn't know where Raz and Caleb was. I didn't know where Bennett was. I heard Razvan and Caleb screaming from their neighbor's window, looking for both of us. I let them know that I was okay, but I didn't know what had happened to Bennett. And I kept hearing noises from the apartment, and eventually Bennett came out, and he was just pouring blood from his face, and I was utterly terrified, but he was just like, yeah, I'm probably going to need to go to a hospital, but he was still a strong guy. Finally, paramedics showed up, the police showed up. The police had like full riot gear, which was strange because it was one scrawny guy probably on some hallucinogen. And I just remember thinking, that's weird, they don't need that much stuff. But they had like riot shields and guns and everything. And they went over and they made sure the paramedics took care of Bennett, and then they sat us on a corner, facing away from the whole apartment complex, which I remember thinking was bizarre as well. And then we heard a taser go off, 4 gunshots, and I didn't know what happened until one of the police officers walked up to one of the paramedics and said, "Hey, can you come over here and pronounce?" I lost it. I was like, oh my god, you killed him, I can't believe this. It was just terrible. I didn't know what to do. Like, yes, he had attacked us, but he obviously wasn't in his right mind. He was on something. And the police report did say that he had a hammer, but I don't know. I really think that they had riot shields. They could have walked forward with a riot shield. The kid weighed less than 150 pounds. He was like 5'5". You could have walked forward with a riot shield and put him up against a wall. It would have been fine. I don't know.
Well, I believe that, I don't know, with their training they might have been able to, possibly, because I think from their story that they said that he came out wielding a hammer. I believe they did use the taser on him, but I think they only used one, and from what I hear, I'm not sure if all the prongs actually from the taser actually hit him. So I think there could have been another non-lethal means of subduing him, but at the same time, I can understand from their perspective why they would want to shoot him, because they had seen me, they knew that he had a weapon, and they did not know what he was capable of. So, do I wish that they had found other means of, subduing him non-lethally? Yes. Do I understand why they also had to shoot him? Absolutely.
Well, as I said earlier, I know the police report maintained he had a hammer. I have read articles that have said that the police officer in question, although he may have been under suspect for unnecessary use of lethal force. Courts cleared him of that. They said it was justified. The attacker had a weapon, but as I said before, they were in full riot gear. He had a hammer. He was naked, under 150 pounds. They could have walked forward with a riot shield and put him up against the wall, handcuffed him, got somebody who had better aim with a taser. There were so many other options that, no, I don't think the use of lethal force was justified in that situation, honestly. I really don't.
So, how are you doing now? What's your life like?
Surprisingly, not much has changed for me since that. I'm still great friends with everybody that I went on the road trip with, but I'm still a student at Norwalk Community College pursuing film production. I am still employed at the same gas station, which hurts me to say, and hopefully I'll be leaving that soon for another job. And I'm just trying to live life day by day and enjoy every moment I can out of it, because as the road trip showed, it can end abruptly and you do want to enjoy as much time as you can.
Well, I've just been going around. I actually moved out to Colorado for a year just to maybe see somewhere else besides Connecticut, because I haven't, been out and about that much outside of Fairfield, but went out to Colorado for about a year, saw some sights. It was pretty nice, but I decided to go back to my roots in Connecticut. Trying to find, just been going around for a couple different jobs. It's weird, I've had several different jobs in the past few months and years. I've worked at a couple fast food places, worked at an extermination job, got a degree in political science from Fairfield University, but don't know what I would apply that to. But in truth, I'm just happy and grateful to be alive, honestly.